From 9, time to talk opinions with public address man Russell Brown at publicaddress.net, the hard news blog, Media7 show, TVNZ7. Morning, Russell.
Good morning. That was a very long introduction.
It was, wasn't it? Sorry.
Yeah, you did well.
It was around and round and roundabout.
Yeah.
The thing that's keeping everyone still interested in politics at the moment is the leadership battle now for the Labour Party, Russell.
Yes, well, at least we now know who's officially in.
Yeah, we do, yeah. And there's more than we thought.
Yes.
Five total of 5 people, although I think a couple of those people want to be deputies.
Yeah. Grant Robertson and Naima Hooter want to be the deputies of David Parker and David Cunliffe, respectively.
Yeah, and David Shearer out on his own.
Shearer in there, who is now in.
Yeah, and is actually saying, yes, I want this job.
Yes.
Now, the first we've heard really from him. There's been lots of speculation. My money's certainly on him, whether it's now or sometime before 2014, but I believe that he will be the man to take Labour into the election.
You may be right. I think the guy's been in Parliament for 2.5 years. He's my local MP. I've got so much time for the guy. I think he's absolutely genuine.
Yeah.
It was interesting. During the campaign, I tweeted about having seen him on his own meeting and greeting outside our local supermarket. And someone else got back to me and said, look, I saw him a couple of days ago planting trees down by Oakley Creek on his own.
No way.
What
really?
sort of politician actually goes and does it because it's the right thing to do and doesn't make a media opportunity?
Absolutely. Maybe he was hoping people would be out there with their phones.
I would have to say that the being party leader isn't the only position of influence. And
sure.
You may find that the way they work it out is something that Shearer actually gets to pursue his agenda of party renewal.
Yeah.
I mean, you would hope they can do this in some sort of collegial fashion, because the last thing they really need is a horrible shit fight that leaves fissures in the party for the next 3 years. And to that end, I think David Cunliffe. If I hear David Cunliffe make another passive-aggressive jab about people spreading rumours about him, he every time he talks about it, he just perpetuates it.
Yeah.
I think he's really not doing himself any good at all.
But don't they need the John Key of Labour? Now, I'm not saying John Key and John Key's experience, the banker and the guy come from the State House. And I'm not talking about that sort of John Key, but the one that the public likes, the everyday kind of guy, but one with substance behind him. Isn't that what Labour needs? Yeah,
possibly, but no one really understands the John Key phenomenon anyway, I think, even on national side. The John Key's relationship with the people of New Zealand is going to be written about. Because on one level it's so utterly unlikely. He's the millionaire as everyman. And he regularly does and says stupid things, but it just seems to make people love him more. I'm not sure whether that's replicable. He's a unique politician in that respect. But they do need someone who is appealing to the public. And, the irony being, of course, that Phil Goff did actually run a pretty good campaign, but spent 3 years projecting very little. Yeah,
but also Phil Goff was tainted with being part of the Helen Clark thing, much like Cunliffe and Parker. We've seen them before. They've been on our screens many times. People probably recognise their faces and align them with an old Labour. Don't they need someone fresh like Shearer?
Yeah, but on the other hand, if you look at what Cunliffe did during Labour's 3 terms, he saw through telecommunications reform, which I think is the big unheralded achievement of the Clark years. Can you imagine what things would be like in New Zealand if telecom hadn't been hauled in?
Sure.
And the intellectual grunt to be able to do that should not be underrated. I mean, this is actually something I agree with David Farrar on. He pointed out that Cunliffe pretty much wrote a lot of that stuff himself. There's very, very few people in Parliament would have been capable of that.
Sure, but I mean, he can carry on
that sort of ability.
Yeah, you need that sort of ability. But doesn't a leader need to surround themselves with these types of experienced people? So you'd have someone who's relatively inexperienced leading, but saying, okay, I don't know everything here. You guys know a whole lot more. I will lead you guys, but I expect you guys to step up with your experience.
Yeah, possibly, and I suppose the great example of that is David Lange, but again, he was a very unusual politician.
Yeah.
in a completely different way than John Key is, to put it mildly. But I don't know whether you can always replicate these things. They've just got to go for what the best solution for themselves is. But I do think they need the revamp and the rethink that Shearer is talking about. Even though, also on the other hand, I think there's a possibility of overdoing that. These things are also cyclic.
Yeah.
And the trough that Labour has hit at 27% is nowhere near as bad as the trough that National hit in 2002 at 20%.
Yeah, that's true.
And, only 3 years later, National nearly won the election.
Yeah.
And possibly if they hadn't had Don Brash, they might have won.
Well, that's right.
But speaking of Don Brash, no longer leader of the ACT Party, or two-step down, ACT is just bizarre. Because you've now got John Banks in there, who was really a helicopter candidate, isn't really an ACT person. No one really thinks he is. He's the only MP now.
Yeah.
And he's talking about merging with the Conservative Party. It's absolutely... I mean, I've been reading some of the right-wing blogs this morning, and those people are beside themselves, but I think that the way they're arguing pretty much speaks to everything that's wrong with ACT. They're being vicious to each other.
Right.
And, I see Peter Cresswell, who has been involved with the Libertarians, has a Facebook page up talking about principles for a new party, a party of all talents. And it would be nice to think that someone competent could pull together a classical Liberal party.
So we're going to see another party emerge in the next couple of years.
People are going to try.
Yeah.
But I think, the problem with ACT has always been that it attracts this spectrum of nutbars.
Yeah.
A lot of people who get involved with ACT are really quite odd.
Well, there's some pretty loopy-looking young people involved with that, that's for
exactly.
sure.
But, but on the other hand, there's some pretty smart young people. I thought David Seymour in Auckland Central, former economics lecturer, has actually written a book. He's not Muriel Newman, put it that way.
So, National would like to see another party formed out to the right, wouldn't they? Because they need another partner come 2014.
Yeah, and I think they like the look of the Conservatives. It may be that in 3 years' time, the National candidate in Rodney, where Colin Craig, the Conservatives leader, stood, might be told to go and hide in a bunker for the campaign because the 2.5%. The problem you get there is that what do the Conservative Party really? Colin Craig has spent a lot of his own money, and he has, to some extent, an appealing message. But do they really have the robustness, or are they just another New Zealand First?
Indeed.
Yeah. No. It's interesting.
All right, you've been and seen the movie When a City Falls, but you saw it with very few people in the theatre.
Yeah, unfortunate that. I really think Aucklanders owe it to themselves to see this movie because, I've actually been down to Christchurch, I think 5 times since the September quake. I've been up close, I've been inside the red zone. I know people who've been quite badly affected, but seeing that movie still brought me much closer to what the experience was. Than any of that. I think Jared Smythe's made a pretty amazing film. It's not perfect. It's too long. There's a couple of things that didn't need to be in there, but it is ultimately it's quite an uplifting film because a lot of it is about people taking on their own backs to make things better. Yeah. And if you go down there, you see that sort of thing. I mean, the gap fillers people are amazing. The so-called book fridge, the community book exchange, whatever they call it. Yeah. Is the kind of thing that you think, wow, that actually works. Yeah, yeah. People actually use it. It's undefended. It's unlocked. It's sitting in the middle of this empty lot, and people go and use it as a book exchange. It's a whole lot of books inside a chiller from a burger bar. Yeah, amazing. Marvellous. Yeah. Okay, and finally, this week's Media7. Yes. Rupert Murdoch is under the gun in all sorts of ways because there are 2 concurrent in Australia and New Zealand, inquiries or reviews of the actions of newspapers, basically, and whether they need to be regulated to a greater extent. The really spectacular one is the one in Britain, the Leveson inquiry, and I've done a satellite interview with James Robinson, the Guardian media reporter, who's been generating so much copy out of that, because it's been, I mean, the irony of it is that it's been a spectacle in itself. You've had Steve Coogan and Hugh Grant stand up there and talk about how, you know, beastly the newspapers have been to them. I think Hugh Grant possibly overdid it. Piers Morgan actually tweeted, well, I hope Nelson Mandela was watching Hugh Grant's testimony, so that he really understands that, you know, Nelson Mandela really understands what persecution is.
Yeah, yeah.
On the other hand, there are some real horror stories. What happened to the McCanns, you know, whose daughter went missing. It's just, you know, unfathomable that anyone would do that. They stole Mrs. McCann's diary, personal diary, and printed it. The News of the World did. Yes. They managed to get it from the Portuguese police. It was wow.
Nuts.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how those come out. We've also got Martin Hurst, who was the first to give evidence to the inquiry in Australia, and immediately thereafter, suffered the full blast of the Murdoch newspapers, who I think in Australia you can't deny that they're utterly partisan, and they're simply doing Rupert Murdoch's bidding. He doesn't like the Gillard government, and day in, day out, they are assailed by those papers. And now Martin Hurst, who used to be at AUT, has stood up accidentally. Didn't mean to even be there giving evidence, but the judge asked him. Huh. And the first question he got from the Sydney Daily Telegraph reporter was, "Are you a communist?"
God.
So that's pretty bizarre as well, in quite a different way.
And of course,
so we've got him too, and Tim Pankhurst from the Media Freedom Committee, and Martin Gilman.
And of course, the Media7 show is on TVNZ7. Are you looking forward to TVNZ7 turning into a shopping channel, Russell?
Oh God, I did see that story. Who knows what's going to happen?
Who knows?
Frankly,
yeah.
There are so many possible things that could happen to the shows currently on TVNZ7. The idea of a public service channel. You've got the Sky TVNZ Igloo project. That will need extra channels. Telecom have got things in mind. Out of Sparta, there was the proposal to commit the TVNZ7 to the care of Maori television. Who knows?
Telecom have something in mind.
Yes, Telecom have a deal with Sky, and Telecom, I think, are looking to get into probably via broadband, so it's going to be a slower process. But Telecom have plans. I'm quite looking forward to finding out what Telecom's plans are, actually.
Okay.
Because the guy there is Jason Paris, the former CEO of MediaWorks.
Yes, and he's the digital guy, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. So he could be quite an interesting figure there. There's a lot going to happen this year. My fear is that National's refusal to see any role for regulation is actually going to wreck things, and Sky will just own all the content rights, and there will be no market. It will be like Telecom in the 90s.
Crikey.
And some future government's going to have to come in and sort it out, the way Labor did with Telecom.
Yeah. Oh, well. In the meantime, yes, publicaddress.net and the Media7 show, TVNZ7. Thanks very much, Russell.
Cheers, matey.
All right, see ya. Coming up to 5 minutes away from 9, I got a track here from the D4.